Okay, well, as introduced, my name is Troy Swift. I own Swift River Pecans, and I'm also the president of the Texas Pecan Growers Association. And uh, I'm going to give you a little bit of my history. Dr. Dingra invited me to come over and talk, and uh, quite frankly, I didn't quite understand my audience. I'm very happy you're here. And it's a little intimidating talking to people that I know are a whole lot smarter than me. But I've been in that situation all my life, so I guess I'll get through it. Uh, this is a picture of my orchard, part of it. This picture was actually made possible by an ACES grant through the Texas Pecan Board, and Blair Krebs here brought the photographer down and took these drone pictures. So what you see here is the man planted trees. These are trees I planted in 2006. Those are primarily Pawnee and Caddo. But out here you see the native population that's along the San Marcos River. So those trees are native pecans, which the Indians used to harvest in the old days. And one of the reasons why today the pecan varieties are named after American Indians. That's why you'll hear us say Pawnee, Caddo, Kiowa, Kansas, Cheyenne, Choctaw, etc. Generally speaking, those Indian names are your modern pecans, although there are still pecans grown, such as Desirable and Mahan and Stewart, and those kind of names that were not released by the USDA after 1955. So the first one I think was Comanche, 1955. Anybody want to guess why it might have been Comanche? Because this is Comancheria, and this is the homeland of the pecan. I don't know that for sure. That's my theory, but it was Comanche. So anyway, I'm going to show you a little history because this might not be your normal farmer talk. This is how it started back in the late 70s and early 80s. That's me in the red hat going over Rio Vista Dam in a Texas water safari style boat. The reason that's pertinent is because we had to build our own canoes. That's actually a canoe. We actually built that canoe. You can see it has decks on it. We raced on the Rio Grande and whitewater in that boat, and that's a very special boat. So we had to build those out of composites. This one in particular is made of composites, which is in this case is fiberglass, aramid, and carbon fiber. Aramid is Kevlar, aka Kevlar. You're saying, so why is he talking about that? Well, because I understood how to build composites and learned how to do vacuum bagging, which was kind of self-taught. I ended up working at a factory that made jet engine fan blades. Those are also composite. That's a GE 90 115B. It's the most powerful jet engine in the world. And I like to say, somebody tell me what you think a lot of horsepower is. Is anybody a car freak? Tell me what a lot of horsepower is. 400. What about super hot rod, NASCAR or something like that? What's a lot of horsepower? 1,000. Okay, this one, 100,000 horsepower. 100,000 horsepower. It can take a Boeing 777 that weighs 775,000 pounds loaded with people, fuel, and cargo from a dead stop to in the air in 45 seconds. And I'm fixing to show you that. Now, the reason I'm showing you this, by the way, some of you may recognize my friend Mark Friesenhahn. He's an engineer. He likes to talk engineering stuff all the time. So I took him and showed him a jet engine and the factory that it's made in. So I just to show him that, you know, I know a little bit about that kind of stuff too. 22 fan blades, 2 engines per aircraft, and they're made out of composites. They're made out of carbon fiber. That's why I ended up working there. I started on the floor making parts, and I ended up being the boss of the manufacturing manager of the whole factory, and I worked there 26 years. In that time, though, I was certified as a supplier black belt, which is statistics, and General Electric. This factory was half owned by General Electric, and that's a GE 90. That means General Electric. If you were going to be anybody in General Electric, you had to have that black belt certification, which is statistics, hardcore manufacturing statistics. And the whole point of the black belt Six Sigma program was to drive the emotion out of problem solving. That's what it was for. It was so engineers and managers couldn't go like this. It's your problem, you caused the problem. And so the answer from the boss men was, this doesn't exist here. Analysis and getting to the root cause of the problem with data, with no emotion, is how we're going to solve problems in this jet engine environment. Now, what you're saying, why is he talking about that? Because I'm fixing to tell you that I took that into my farming. But before I do that, I want to show you this. If I can make it work. So you see those fan blades? The engine produces 100,000 horsepower. In jet engine terms, that means it produces 115,000 pounds of thrust. That's how jet engines are rated. 115,000 pounds of thrust. It's the most powerful jet engine in the world. 2 of them go on a Boeing 777. And here's what they do in real life. And I guess the ad wants to play. If you like that kind of thing, you can YouTube that all day long. Those things just go on and on and on. But that's the world I came from. So those of you that I work with, the scientists out here that I work with, have always thought there was something wrong with me in agriculture, and that's because that's how I was trained. I was trained to deal with that. And so I've asked some pretty silly questions at pecan conventions and things like that, where people wonder, why is he like that? And that's why. So there is one of our big native pecan trees. That picture was taken a while back. So if you think about that pecan tree, some of you have seen that pecan tree or others like it. There's plenty of them around in river bottoms, which is the native land of the pecan. Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and going up the Mississippi a little bit in northern Mexico. But really, here is the homeland of the pecan. And I'm very proud of that. Now, if you think about that pecan tree, it's quite possible that when the Comanches walked down the Blanco and San Marcos River on their way to Linville, which is now Victoria, to run the whites out into the ocean in 1840, it's very likely they walked right by that tree. So there's a lot of history involved. with these trees if they could just talk. The Indians, Comanches, probably ate pecans off of that tree. Not that tree's parents, but that tree. Very possible. Now, you got to be a little careful making assumptions like that, because trees that grow in the really ideal conditions and good soil and water and lots of sun, they can grow fast. But I've had people look at this tree and, you know, they think it's very possible that could have happened. That means it was there when the Alamo was fought. I changed my methodology of farming to what is now called regenerative agriculture. That has not gone over very well with everybody, but I'm doing it anyway. Okay. And now, because the word regenerative is now kind of has some connotations like organic got and all that. It's not organic, by the way. Regenerative is not organic. And so now we're sometimes calling it soil health management, if you want to, you know, tone it down a little bit. But regenerative is what I'm sticking with. And why are we doing that? Well, the main reason, there's two reasons. One reason I changed, I had some trees dying and I was doing everything I was supposed to and they were dying and I didn't know what to do. So I had a recommendation that you either had a bad rootstock or something's wrong with your soil. And I said, well, I'm not going to change the rootstock because I'm not going to dig the tree out and start over, but I can study soil. And so I did. I began it. That started in about, that statement happened in 2021 while we were standing around dead trees. But I really started in 2019. And in 2019 is when I eliminated herbicides from my operation. Now, I'm not anti-herbicide. I'm just saying that that's when I did. Okay. There's still evidence that says, especially on young trees, if you use it, it might help the tree grow faster. I'm trying it without it. So the real reason, though, besides that, is that we know that from here to the Pacific Ocean, agriculture has a serious water problem. I've done talks like this in California and at other organizations, and water is the big deal everywhere. And so it was presented to me with a paper from Dr. Ken Mix of Texas State University about the soil having the ability to hold 15 to 25,000 gallons of water per 1% of organic matter in the top 6 inches of the soil per acre. And I said, okay, that's important. If we're in a water situation, a dry situation, that is probably the most important thing to me. I can do all the chemicals and all the management in the world, but I'm not going to make it without water. So I said, that's the important thing. Also known as, I want to turn my soil into a sponge. I want that water that rains on my soil to stay on my soil. And also anything it can carry away, I want it to stay there. I don't want it leaching. I don't want it leaching my chemicals away. And so the other reason is resilience to supply chain disruptions. I need my soil to be resilient. I need my plants to be resilient so that when something like the Russia-Ukraine war happens, I'm not all of a sudden having a panic attack because nitrogen just tripled and phosphorus became non-available. And so I'm sitting here going, I don't want to be vulnerable to drought and I don't want to be vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. So what can I do? I can make my soil as healthy as I can. That doesn't mean I can't use these other things, but it means I need to be working on my resilience, and that's what I'm doing. By the way, drought can be caused by more than just the weather. Drought can be caused by politics. Drought can be caused by local management, water management organizations. Somebody can just say, Troy, you can't irrigate anymore. If that happened, it would be terrible. But I'm doing everything to make my soil a sponge. That's a big deal. And then there's customer demand. Customer demand. I have never had so much attention on my pecan organization as I have now since I made this change. People want local, they want good nutrition, and they want to eat food they know is responsibly grown. if you had a choice between a pecan that had fungicide sprayed on it or insecticide and one that didn't, and they were more or less the same quality, you'd probably buy the one that didn't have the insecticide. Now, if you're really educated on that, it might not make any difference to you, but if you're a normal consumer, who I sell to, that's important. People often walk in my store and say, do you grow organic? And I say, no, but they never walk out if I say, but I am using regenerative practices and I'm being as environmentally responsible as I can to build a nutritious nut, make the sale every time. So customer expectations are there too. And I think that is going to continue to change and become more prevalent. Now, what I'm doing though, what I'm trying to do, I mentioned these earlier today to somebody. I'm trying to increase disease resistance by inducing systemic acquired resistance and induce systemic resistance, okay? That means I'm trying to make the tree strong so when a pathogen like pecan scab comes along, we're ready to fight. The tree is ready to fight. And so I've been spraying a bacteria on the trees to make them think they're being attacked by a pathogen so they're ready when the fungus comes along. I'm in my third year of that. Seems to be working very well. Now, that's not the only thing I'm doing. I am spraying some PO7s, which is phosphites, and I am spraying a combo frac BMO1. BMO1 is an organic fungicide. But I've essentially reduced my hardcore fungicides from 6 sprays to 1 or 2. And I'm doing that because I want to conserve the soil microbiome, particularly the mycorrhizal fungi. I don't want to be killing those. The pecan tree needs those because they don't have root hairs. So get those things done. And also, you know, pollution reduction. Everybody gets mad at agriculture for leaching chemicals into the river and then into the Gulf, into the big dead zone in the Gulf. I'm doing my part. Now, again, that doesn't mean I won't use them, but I try not to. Try to figure out a better way. So remember, I said, I think I had this on the previous slide, in the Six Sigma mentality, you had to have continuous improvement. You were expected as an employee in the jet engine business to make things better. And employers, by the way, for those of you that are going on to a career, they like problem solvers, not problem causers. So if you're new in the workforce, problem causers is going to be a short career. Problem solvers, you'll be valuable. Just remember that if you're young and going into it. So continuous improvement, and that's what I'm trying to do. Now, this is new territory for us pecan growers. There's chances that I could be making mistakes. But if I do, I'm going to admit it, and then I'm going to move on. So far, we're looking pretty good. So the 6 soil health principles, if you're interested in regenerative agriculture, I learned that a green laser works better on these kind of screens. Keep the soil covered, maintain a continuous living root, minimize the disturbance, maximize biodiversity above and below the ground. So if you have a biodiverse orchard floor, in other words, lots of different kind of plants, as opposed to a golf course, because I used to keep it looking like a golf course till I realized I wasn't playing golf there. So why does it need to look like a golf course? So now we let it grow, and we have as many different species, and you want to mix grasses and forbs. You want a biodiverse system because those roots then provide nutrients for a biodiverse underground, biosystem. Microbiome is what I'm trying to say. So not every plant produces the same kind of sugars. Not every bacteria and fungus and other things eat the same thing. And so when you do that, You're collecting the sun's energy with the green plants, right? It's a solar collector. You're collecting the sun's energy. It's converting it through the miracle of photosynthesis into sugars and carbon chains, and the plant uses some of them, and what it has excess, it sends into the ground and causes what are called root exudates that come out of the roots of the plant and feed the microbiome the sugars they need but can't make because they're in the ground and they can't do photosynthesis. They then mine minerals like zinc and phosphorus and things like that and are able to feed it back to the tree. And there's a new term I learned, and that was discovered in 2008 in Australia, called the rhizophagy cycle. It happens in the rhizosphere, which is the area around the roots, right around the roots below the soil. And the exudates that the roots are pushing out are attracted to those sugars at the meristem, at the end of the root, and the root actually opens up and consumes some of the microorganisms, and it strips them of their minerals that the plants can't get. Only the microorganisms can. And then the tree expels the microorganisms back out into the soil and tells them to go get some more. That's the rhizophagy cycle. You can read a book about it called Teeming with Bacteria by Lowenfels if you're interested in it. He also wrote one about fertilizers and teeming with fungi and all sorts of things like that. It's made for people like me that are not in the lab and as educated as y'all are, but it helps me understand what's going on. So then above the ground, we have the phylosphere. Lots of biology goes on there that I don't understand, but there are organisms on the leaves and on the trunk, and all sorts of things going on up there too that I think we need to study more. So I don't do anything without testing it. And this happens to be what's called a Johnson-Su bioreactor. It sounds complicated. Every time I hear it, I think about tubes and pressure vessels and stainless steel. It's not. It's a concrete wire with porous fabric. You can look this up on the internet, how to build one if you want to. In my opinion, this is the best compost you can make, even if you're just using it for a garden. Very high fungal to bacterial ratio. There's the fungal to bacterial ratio right there, which is very high, 10-to-1. Fungal to bacterial ratio is very high. So from my readings, I understand that higher order plants like trees and grapevines and bushes and things like that prefer to have a higher fungal to bacterial ratio. And a lot of that is mycorrhizal, endo, and ecto that are associating with those roots and expanding the root surface area many, many times to absorb water and minerals and things of that nature. So now the interesting thing about this is that you can put it in a sprayer and it dissolves. It's not compost tea. You're not feeding it and you're not putting bubbles in it. It dissolves. It's called a compost extract. It really dissolves. There's nothing left. If you go 1 year and you water it 2 minutes a day, 1 or 2 minutes a day with an automatic timer, it'll take wood chips, high carbon wood chips, and take it down to this compost that dissolves. That means you don't have to do the C/N ratios if you're making compost. That means you don't have to turn it. You don't have to do anything. It's totally passive other than the irrigation. And so this is Andy Marsh. She graduated from this university. She has her own business that does microscopic analysis of this type of material, and she puts out the reports about your bacterial to fungal ratio and does it meet the quality standards of the compost world and all of that sort of thing. And I have her test. So then, I dissolve it and I put it in this sprayer right here. Let me run this and you'll understand. I'm injecting it into the ground. I spray it and I knife it in. And so a logical person would say, how do you know those organisms are living through the pressure of that pump? How do you know you're not killing them in the pump? And that's why I have her there looking through that microscope and making sure everything is cool. And we did it with filters in, we did it with filters out, we did it at 60 PSI, we did it at 40 PSI. And the general rule about this is you want to stay below 50 PSI just to make sure you're not smashing things, killing organisms. Okay. So that's how we knife it in. Those shanks, by the way, are available in agriculture. That's not me inventing that. You can find that on the internet. They come in all different kinds of shapes. So we run that through screens and filters so you don't clog up your sprayer. If you just put it in there without screening it, you're going to learn every part of the sprayer because you're going to have to take it apart. Ask me how I know. Oh, I can go back to this now. All right, here is one of our favorite experiments. This is Dr. Dingra, who approached me several years ago wanting to do a new orchard with a biochar treatment. And so we designed, now, just so you can see how great I am on computers, that's my drawing. And fortunately, my 27-year-old daughter had left these colors laying around in the closet, and I made that map of the orchard, okay? But what we did is we came in and planted 110 trees, and each color, which corresponds here, is a different treatment. And this was designed by Dr. Dingra. And so there's two different kinds of biochar that were supplied, one what we'll call regular biochar and one mineralized, which I think means that it had minerals from the fly ash industry, right? So it has some minerals in it. The others didn't have those minerals. And we designed the experiment to, when you plant a pecan tree, you drill a hole with a 1-foot auger, and then we calculated the volume of the hole, and then the treatment was 10 and 15% of hole volume with those two different kinds of biochar in a separate test. And also the same thing with 10 and 15% of each of those, along with 10 and 15% of undissolved Johnson-Su bioreactor compost, and then a control. So we did a control, which is the yellow, and we randomized this when we did it, and it just so happened that those two controls ended up like that. That's just how it worked. And so now we're measuring the diameter of the trees at 3 feet off the ground with calipers every year, every March. And so now what this is telling us is that regular biochar, 15% by whole volume, no compost is in first place. And then the next one is mineralized biochar with compost. This is going to change back and forth over the years. But the point is over about 6 or 8 or 10 years, we're going to see if this treatment at bare root planting made any difference or not. And by the way, that's after 17 months. The tree's in very good shape. And you notice there's no herbicide here, but we do usually keep it more maintained with weed eaters and things of that nature. So anyway, that's what we're going on. And again, here we are measuring again to see what's going on. All right, so another thing we're doing, I'm in a 6-year study with the Noble Research Institute where they come in and measure soil, do soil testing, and they use the Haney soil test as one of the main ones. The Haney soil test is different than conventional because it adds a biological side, and it has what's called a CO2 burst. that's the CO2 lady right there. And she explains CO2 and increased CO2. We like to say there's no, it's not by accident the stomata are on the bottom of the leaf, because the CO2 is coming up out of the ground. And the more alive the soil is, the more CO2 is coming out. It's respiring. And that, plus other things, organic matter and other things, goes into what's called a soil health score. And Rick Haney worked for the USDA, and the way he got onto this test is he was up in Iowa or somewhere like that, and he noticed corn growing that he knew nobody was putting nitrogen on, and he said, how's that possible? Well, what it works out to be is that the soil microbiology was doing a pretty good job with the nitrogen. And what it does, if you want even a skeptic, if they don't believe the countermeasure to drought, if you want to talk about nitrogen, here's a good way to do it. Because what this test says right here is that we would have, if it was a conventional soil test, we would have had about 17 pounds of nitrogen per acre, but we really have about 85. So we have a savings of 60 pounds of nitrogen. So even if you wanted to do the regular prescription of 100 pounds of nitrogen an acre, you can say, well, I don't need to buy but 40. So it saves you money if you want to look at it that way. And that's one way I do want to look at it. And then the other thing is organic matter, which is here in savings, nitrogen savings, and the soil health score. And so that's great, Troy, but how you doing with all that? Here's how we're doing with it. This is from Noble Research. This is the end of the 3rd year, and you can see that, except that the scale is off. The yellow is 2025, and this is the soil health score. So every year our soil health is going up. This is about 10 different farms. I should have hid their names. They didn't give me permission, so don't remember their names. But up to here is me. This is me right here. This is one farm, and where it dips down right here is my Staples farm, which is a different farm, but it's supposed to be the same soil type, but look, it's different. But anyway, the soil health score goes up, and also I have access to everybody else's data that's in the program, and so I know who's doing what I'm doing, and I can go see if their soil health is improving also. And I know what they're doing. A plant available in, look at this. Look at this. Man, after the 2nd year, now, I didn't tell you something, but I knife in that Johnson Sioux and I spray it, but I also come along and spread lightly wood chips all over the orchard floor. And we're seeing with my farm and Mike Willard's farm that the ones that are doing that are seeing this number get better all the time. Now, here's something else that's also very important, which is the next slide. And that is, water soluble organic carbon. I got something else to show you. This measures the readily available food for soil microbes. That's why it's important. And see, look at it. Look at it for all these people that are doing this. It's going up. Now, when you're playing with statistics and data, just because it says it's good doesn't mean it's good. Even in the jet engine business, we would come up with something that was statistically significant, but then you have to really ask, is that really important? Because it can be statistically significant and not be important. But I think this is, but we're going on with the study. So we'll find out down the road. Here's a biggie. Look at our pH over here. We're standing up, we're up here. Look, where we were. I mean, we're up at 8.45, 8.2. We're above 8. You get above 8, you're starting to have some challenges. And those challenges are the ability of the plant to absorb minerals, particularly zinc and manganese. If you look at those charts, those pH charts, you'll see those bands get very narrow at these high pHs. But now, look at the scale. I'm not saying we're knocking it down by a whole point, but that's a logarithmic scale. I'm saying we're knocking it down by decimals. but we're going in the right direction. And I'm pretty excited about this. Look at that. Look at that. Below 8. Below 8. We're actually in the 7 numbers. If you have high pH, that gets you all excited. Are y'all excited? Okay, I can tell. All right, now we're going to go on to bats. What, bats? So I'm a member of Merlin Tuttle's Bat Conservation. I'm on the board of directors. He came to my farm and he said, Troy, you know, this regenerative ag and all that, you ought to have some bats helping you with your insect control. What do bats eat? Bats eat moss. What do moths eat? Pecans. Pecan nut case bearer and hickory shuckworm are 2 biggies, but also bats eat stink bugs. Bats eat mosquitoes, bats eat beetles, they eat ants, they eat cockroaches. If it flies, it dies. We've even found cattle DNA in the guano. Oh, I didn't tell you, we gather up the guano and we send it to a lab at Northern Arizona University called Species from Feces. And they can tell us what kind of bats this is, which happens to be Brazilian freetails. And you say, why didn't you say Mexican freetails? It's because they're Brazilian freetails. Okay. And evening bats, which are forest bats, they live in pecan trees along with red bats that we're now getting pictures of in pecan trees. They're definitely confirmed to eat pecan nut case bearer. But here's what they eat. I didn't know I had that up there yet. But look, beetles, moss, stink bugs of all sorts, mosquitoes and flies, termites, mayflies, on and on and on until you get down. Now, yeah, there's some beneficials down there, but the predator-prey ratio keeps everything under control. You don't wipe out your beneficials, but they do eat some of them. They don't care. Now, look at this term. I just learned this term. In fact, Kyle Slusher, Dr. Slusher, who's an A&M entomologist, taught me this word the other day. They're using bats now sometimes in Cairo surveillance, which means they're looking for invasive species, particularly marmorated stink bug, brown marmorated stink bug. And they're saying in the paper that he supplied to me that bats, by studying the guano, are detecting emerging pests 4 weeks before pheromone traps. And I always suspected that because in my county, we came up with termites. What are those bad termites in Houston? Formosan, they came up with those. That's never been reported in my county. But a freetail can fly 150 miles in a night to go eat, so he could have just eaten it over there. We don't know that. Anyway, that's a new cool thing. And here is what bats look like. So you wanted to know if the bat houses worked? Well, here you go. If you want to watch bats for your enjoyment, then you need to do it right at daylight. It's the best time to watch them because this is what they look like coming home. That's in the pecan orchard. And that, when you get there right at daylight, I mean, right when you can barely see, you'll see one go by, you'll see another one go by. And you're going, oh man, I hope they didn't leave. Because sometimes they leave and go to a different bat house or go back to the trees. But then all of a sudden this happens. And then in 15 minutes, they're going to all be in that house, whether you have 10 or 400. And when the last one goes in, you might as well go home because it's over. That's just how it is. And the most we've had in a bat house so far is 400. To relate that to pecans, one of those bat weighs about the same as a Nakono pecan, about 10 or 11 or 12 grams. 13 if you're growing a good pecan. Oh, well, there they are again. Everybody likes to watch that. All right, here's another one. So notice that orchard floor has very tall grass. And my point here is that tree on the left is seriously overloaded and the tree on the right is seriously overloaded. The one on the left is Caddo, the one on the right is Pawnee. I had Dr. Stunt, so this is crop load management before the pecans are mature. This happens in July. And nobody likes doing this. I mean, this hurts you when you shake your crop off. And why are you doing that? Because you want the remainder of the pecans to be big and high quality, and you want a return crop next year. If you overload, you have the potential of having low quality this year and no crop next year. So we do this, but I don't like doing it. So I had Dr. Stein tell my guy when to stop shaking. So watch the one on the left. I hope the one on the right runs. I couldn't get it to go a while ago, but you'll get the idea right here. Watch this tree. Now, keep in mind, this is in tall grass, regenerative ag. This tree is seriously overloaded. Let the load go, didn't it? That was in 2024. Let's see if this one will run. Too bad, because that tree's flat. That tree's supposed to be standing up. It has too many pecans. This was just a couple of months ago. And so we did crop load management. I only did 60 trees out of 300 in this orchard. And when I was harvesting the pecans, I was kicking myself in the butt for doing that because I wasn't getting a lot of pecans off the trees I shook. Then I went and graded the pecans, and then I was kicking myself in the butt for not doing all of them because the ones that I did, I only got a minute left or something. I'll go. Can't believe it. This is what it looks like spraying. This is Dr. Stein from A&M doing a micronutrient test. I put this in here because most people never seen a sprayer from the air. And this really woke me up because I've sprayed trees all the time. When you're spraying a tree, you can only see the tree in the sprayer. Look what's going through the tree and out to wherever you might not want it to go. This is the origin of drift. If you ever hear about a drift problem. Anyway, that's what a sprayer looks like. Now, I've shown this to people, and you should be calibrating your sprayer better. You should have your pressure set. You don't know this when you're in a tractor. This is the only way you would know this. Anyway, I think that's just a cool video of what really goes on. That's a calm day, by the way, so we're not having any drift because it's calm, and we're also not spraying anything that would be bad. Anyway, this is him back again just the other day, and this little triangle represents some percentage of the base of the tree, and they sprayed these micronutrients, and they're counting the amount of pecans to see if it helped with more pecans, and also they're taking these pecans and grading them and doing leaf analysis of it. And here it is. I got the leaf analysis back. This is just for the test. I also got the NPK and all the other stuff, which I looked at, and it looks pretty good. But look at what happened at water stage, one spray. The molly shot up to here. This is Dr. Stein's data. And so it really had a huge impact for molly, but it didn't have such a huge impact for cobalt or nickel, but it did have some. But what we've learned is, and what Dr. Stein's very surprised at, is how much difference water stage mattered. We don't know why. But anyway, we continue to learn. That's the whole point. So the conclusion is regenerative ag adds nature's tools and modern science. I am not knocking modern science. And for the people in here like Monty and Larry, you've heard me mention several times, without them, I would never be where I am now in the pecan world, and Dr. Joe. I just wouldn't be here. But I'm thinking out of the box and trying to go on, and I appreciate y'all listening to these ideas. Healthy soil and biodiversity are fundamental aspects of good agriculture. There is a saying, and I didn't make it up, by the way, healthy soil makes healthy plants, makes healthy food, makes healthy people. That's one of the marketing things. So I had somebody tell me, oh, Troy, you're just doing this because it's a marketing gimmick. And I said, you're almost right. Just take off the gimmick part, because it is marketing. It does work. And that does matter to a business like me, a small pecan business. Ground cover protects and builds the soil, collects the solar energy. I talked about that. Organic matter conserves water, and biodiverse systems provide food and habitat for beneficial organisms above and below the ground. These are the organizations I work with, give them credit. You'll see A&M on here a couple of times, once right there, once right there. I work with them. I work with Texas State University with these two PhDs, Noble Research, Merlin Tuttle's Bat Conservation. Those are the organizations I'm currently conducting experiments with. And it's fun, by the way. By the way, this is more fun than the other way. Okay. And there's my final slide. Who has questions? And I took that with an iPhone. You see that stick? That's the top of a baby pecan tree. You put those sticks, when I showed you that experiment, there were sticks sticking up in the air. Well, when you train pecan trees when they're young, you take off a lot of stuff, but you always have this shoot on the top that grows real fast, and it gets about this tall, but it gets this tall before it's lignified. It's just green, and a bird's going to land on it, break it off every time. So you put a stick on the cage that you have to keep the deer off, and the birds will sit on top of the stick instead of on top of the tree. So you save the top of the tree. Yes, sir. We shred once about 2 weeks before we harvest so that it can dry out. And if you looked at my Pawnee side right now, you wouldn't know that it ever was tall. Those harvesters can handle some grass. I've harvested natives in very rough conditions in big weeds, and you know, it's not optimum, but it still works. But if you mow the grass and let it dry out, the harvesters have a way of spreading out the grass, and you don't lose much. You don't lose much. Yes, sir. One or two, depending on the variety. Twice and early. I do it. It's a preventative. It's a bacteria. It's called Lifeguard. It's put out by Certus Biologicals, and it's Bacillus mycoides, if I'm pronouncing it right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You talked about the nitrogen availability.
Yeah.
In your soil test. Can you relate that to pounds of nitrogen per acre? Where is your orchard right now in terms of nitrogen management? And is it all coming from everything you've been doing?
Yeah, about 60 pounds, and other than some foliar nitrogen and small amounts of nitrogen, like I probably only put out another 2 or 3 pounds an acre with all the other little things I'm doing. Yeah. And that's still under the recommendation, but I'm watching my trees. By the way, my trees that got sick are now alive and doing well. And so I'm not saying I'm done with nitrogen. Don't get me wrong. Yes.
Beyond dark.
Oh, yes. We do Noble. That's part of the Noble study. The Noble study is PLFA soil test, Haney soil test 2 times a year. Spring and right now. In fact, they're taking samples yesterday. And then leaf analysis at the normal time, and then normal conventional leaf analysis that we all do. And then nut nutrition analysis. So we haven't got the data yet on that, but we're trying to prove that we're building a more nutritious pecan by doing this. That's not proven yet. In fact, in science, you're not supposed to say proven, but it's not, we don't have data that indicates that yet. Let's put it that way. How about there? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. We're also doing E. coli testing in the Noble Research. I forgot to mention that. They're doing food safety from nuts off the ground. But for cattle, we like to get, I don't have cattle, but other places that I harvest, we like to get them out 45 days in advance. That's what the state likes. And, but I don't have it. So in the 6 soil health principles, you notice there was 5 and the bottom one was context. That's the way that you can, that's your excuse. I don't want cattle because they're gonna break off my sprinkler heads and I gotta manage them and I'm not in the cattle business, so they're out of my context, so I don't have them. But I have tremendous amounts of deer and wildlife and turkeys and all kinds of animals that live there, and you can see it. And I don't get those out 45 days before because I can't. Lots and lots of deer, man. We have so many deer, it's unbelievable. I had another question somewhere. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Like build it, it will come, or do you like purchase bags also?
No, you can't purchase bats. So first you buy the bat house and put it up. Then they don't come. Then you come to me and I sell you a box of batnip. No, that's a joke. There's no such thing as batnip. Okay. No, if they need a place to live, they will come live there. They're just like us. If a house was built down the road and you're perfectly happy with your house, you're not going to move. But if your house burned down and there's a house down the road that needs somebody to live in it, you're going to consider moving immediately. So if their barn got knocked down, if their tree got knocked down, they'll move in immediately. We've put bat houses in 7 different counties in Texas, including Belding Farms in Pecos County, which is almost desert. And we've had them inhabit those houses in every county that we've put them in, eventually from anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months.
Well, one is, I have the
Oh, well, you get a beer and you go sit down there and then you have your wife count them. No, what you really do is you count them when they're coming out. They're fairly orderly coming out, like they'll come out and you know what time because you did it the night before. You know, tonight's going to be 8:10. Okay, here comes one, comes out, and then 2 or 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's what you do. And you count until you get to her till they quit. And so you can video them and slow down the video, which is what I had to do for the 400, which I actually rounded up from 397.
question was, with the management, I think biggest challenge with the concrete planning and layering. My question is, the ones that you did the crop load management versus the then is regenerative farming or practical health management affecting the trees differently or similarly?
Well, I don't know for sure yet, but the reason I showed you that 2024 crop load management and the 2025 crop load management was that I had that situation at least 2 years in a row. And so the real answer is I hope, and I think it will, but I don't have enough data to prove that yet. And so this year, with 2 very, very heavy crops back to back, I think next year's flowering season is going to be one of those periods that this pecan farmer is very nervous to see if those female flowers show up. No female flowers, no pecan. I have actually. In my first farm, which I still own, I planted some pecan trees down by the river, and I was spraying zinc on them with a little hand sprayer because they were just little trees like I showed. You know, you go spray a tree and then you go to the next one. And then I went back to spray them 2 weeks like I was supposed to, and there wasn't any tree. And then I went to another one and there wasn't any tree. And another one and there wasn't any tree. And I looked at the stump and I said, that's beavers. And then I said, where did they take those trees? And I got out of my mule and I walked down in the river and I could tell where they had drug it down into the river. And, you know, tree this big around, 6 or 8 feet tall, and it really, really made me not like beavers that day. Any other questions? If the trees are healthy, it depends at the stage of the crop, but if the trees are healthy, you don't have to worry too much about it. I, knock on wood, have not been zapped out by a early or a late freeze. But the further north you go in Texas, people do get knocked out. The crop early or late, huh? North and west, yeah. North and west, yeah. I'm just lucky so far. But it can, if it's a really early freeze or a really late freeze and there's new or late crop, that can affect you badly. But pecan trees grow all the way up to southern Illinois. There's even reports of them in southern Ontario. And the tree can handle it if it's healthy. But like those trees that I said died in 2021, those guys were sick already and they just gave it up. They said no more. But I don't really worry about cold snap. When that big cold snap came and society fell apart because it snowed, I was sitting on the back porch with coffee in the morning and a fire in the fireplace and beer in the evening and said, I really like these days off. And I collected water. I knew it was coming. The news told me it's coming. I had plenty of water. I didn't have to worry about flushing the toilet. Any other questions?
Really great to have you here. You're doing these experiments that have been introduced sometimes in academia, and thank you for the collaboration with several of us across different departments.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And I'm never going to be the big pecan farmer. I'm never going to grow 1 million pounds. I'm never going to say I shipped 1 million pounds in a year or anything. But what I can say is I'm trying these things, and what I tell people, some of you in here and other people, sometimes people are skeptical about what I'm doing. I just say, if it works, I'm going to tell you. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to tell you. And I just want to learn. And so far we've been pretty successful. But you know, we could stub our toe. We could stub our toe doing this. I did a presentation at TPGA a while back, and one of our prominent scientists who's sitting in this room right now says, I'm glad Troy's doing it, but it's risky. Some of it. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I just forgot one. I don't think I said this. If I did, I'm sorry. But back in 1998, when I did that Six Sigma thing, I got put in with General Electrics. This was their first Six Sigma class in the jet engine business. I got put in with their most brilliant engineers, their most brilliant PhDs and statisticians, people that have patents for now on. I got put in that group and I was intimidated. And I was a little bit intimidated today because I know who's sitting out there. So anyway, thanks for listening to me. If you don't agree with it, that's fine, but open your mind and take advantage of the opportunities when they're available. Thank you very much.